Hi, my name is Linda Carol Brewski. I was born in Littlefield, Texas, a small town 35 miles west of Lubbock. I was one of millions of babies, called baby boomers, born in the 5 years following World War II. I was lucky to have grown up in a loving Christian home with my parents and my one younger sister. My mom was a stay-at-home mom who believed that her girls had to learn the skills of homemaking from an early age. So as soon as we were big enough to do so, she had us standing on a stool to iron the clothes and wash the dishes. One thing I always enjoyed was watching my mom cook. I would stand beside her and watch as she measured out the ingredients for a cake or made her great fried chicken, mashed potatoes, and gravy. Oh, and by the way, back in the old days, we didn't go to the grocery store and buy packages of chicken already cut up or countless packages of frozen vegetables. Only whole chickens and fresh vegetables were available, so I watched my mom butcher the chicken and prepare vegetables straight from the field before she cooked them. By the time I was 12 years old, I had mastered her techniques. I discovered my love for cooking early, realizing the joys of the family sharing meals together, and also that preparing food is a personal way of giving of oneself. I've realized through the years how much food triggers wonderful memories. Picnics, church socials, family gatherings, and times with good friends often take place around food. Different foods bring back very special times in our lives. Family traditions are also passed down through generations through food. My mom was one of 9 children. All her sisters were wonderful Southern cooks, none gourmet, but masters of good old comfort food. Long before I was born, many weekends, several of them would visit my aunt's house for dinner. Story has it, one weekend she prepared a simple dish, most commonly known today as goulash. Someone commented on how good it was, and she replied, "Well, we're so poor, it'll have to do." That night, the dish became known as Pordu. Well, every member of my family, including aunts, uncles, and cousins for 3 generations, have grown up knowing about and loving Pordu. Even today, all my granddaughters have grown up with Pordu, and I feel sure they'll tell their children the story of this great family tradition, which, by the way, is always served with a pan of cornbread. When I was 20 years old, I married a West Texas boy. It was during the Vietnam War, and we were stationed in San Antonio. As a young Army wife, I had to find a job quickly and ended up going to work at a bank near the base. I continued to work in banks as we later moved to Fort Worth and then back to Lubbock. After 8 years of learning every aspect of banking and lending that I could, I was promoted to a mortgage loan officer, a position that was most often offered only to men. Also, at that time, it was unprecedented for a woman's salary to be even close to what a man was paid. At that point, I was making more than my spouse, which royally ticked him off. I told him if he didn't like it, he'd better get moving because I was on my way up. In 1980, a large bank hired me as their underwriter, and in 1985, the bank created their mortgage company separate from the bank and moved me to Dallas to build an underwriting staff. At that time, I was one of 9 employees of the mortgage company. When I left that company, today known as Bank of America, I was vice president in charge of credit policy for a company of 4,000 employees, in charge of 150 underwriters in 3 locations across the country, and I was the only original mortgage officer who was still with the company. I left with a great sense of accomplishment, knowing I had climbed the corporate ladder at a time when women had to struggle to be acknowledged. As rewarding as my career was, my family has always been the spice of my life. I have a son and a daughter and 4 beautiful granddaughters. They all bring me such great joy. Living as a baby boomer, I've seen so much change throughout the years, some good, some not so much. I vividly remember when we got our first television when I was 5. There were no colored TVs back then, and oh, I was so excited when I saw my first Howdy Doody show. The picture was fuzzy, but we didn't mind. As children, we didn't watch much TV because our parents didn't allow it. Instead, we ran up and down the neighborhood with our friends, playing kick the can and many other games. It really hasn't been that many years ago that there were no computers, fax machines, or cell phones. Today's generation cannot imagine how we existed, but truth be known, the quality of our lives was so much better back then. Childhood obesity, use of drugs, teenage pregnancy, and broken families were not major issues. Divorces were rare, and people actually stood up for what they believed. Families spent quality time together, and people worked hard. They believed in an honest day's work for an honest day's pay. Children were taught from an early age the value of a dollar. People saved hard for things they wanted because credit cards didn't exist. Bankruptcy courts were not needed because people did not spend beyond their means. Yes, those truly were the good old days, and I miss them. I pray that your generation realizes soon how the breakdown of the family has contributed to the deterioration of our country. Many times I've heard someone say, I learned so much at the knee of my parent or my grandparent. That's because we used to listen to the stories and advice our previous generations passed down to us. I hope and pray that as you start your families and your careers, that you will implement some of the practices from my generation. Make it a priority to have family meals together with no cell phones allowed, of course. Realize that when you buy your first home, it will not resemble your parents' current home with the granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. It will look more like their starter home, more humble, most likely smaller, but still one you can cherish because you saved hard for it. Don't ever buy a car you can't pay for in full within 3 years, because you'll be in a cycle very hard to escape. You get the picture. Generations teach those who follow. Look at our successes and our failures and learn all you can. Your life will be richer if you learn those life lessons.